Hey, so I am back with another episode. Thank you for joining me again on the Unearth with Sasha-Shae podcast. If you're tuned in via YouTube or wherever you may be listening to this, welcome, welcome. So today, in this episode, I essentially wanted to kind of cover, the importance of like why our core values should drive how we interact with our clients or customers, and even just in general, right? Like dealing one to one with people or in small groups, large groups, whatever the case is. Like core values really are important, and how solidified are we in that? So, as a little background, probably about two or so posts, I was kind of drilling into the idea of purpose fueled living. And for me, that really is just the idea that, God created us unique. Each individual is unique. We all have a specific purpose in this earth, and sometimes it's a little challenge to be able to figure out what that looks like, but we definitely ought to be fueled by purpose, right? And I know I shared a bit about the fact that, like, to live purpose fueled, it simply is just taking moments in our day to really spend time with God, taking moments to have an attitude of gratitude, because I know, and I know that there are times in our day where we could get really derailed and feel like, oh my gosh, this is the worst day ever. And when we pull back and we look at things, we realize, this one bad thing that happened, or maybe multiple bad things that happened in the day, really doesn't kind of outweigh everything else that was good. So for me, that's been one of my like actions that I'm really trying to be intentional about, especially in this year, is to look more towards the things that I can be thankful for, can be grateful about, and have that mostly in my mind, and not, make little things like whatever little bad things derail the entire day. Um, Another aspect of living purpose fueled was really just the idea that we for sure need to cultivate or continue to cultivate our communities. So, whether that's the home life, whether that's with friends, whether that's with family, whatever the case is, however that may look, it could be coworkers, schoolmates, classmates, whatever, right? Just many different aspects of it. So, two things I'm gonna touch on today, and then I'll just be out of your way. So, the first thing, being very clear on your core values, being clear on the things that absolutely governs, who you are, what you believe, what you stand for, is going to be crucial in just how you operate, right? So for example, for me, faith, I, I feel like by now y'all should know, faith is a very big pillar, a very big value for me. And that's simply because I have dedicated my life to Christ. So therefore, for me, it is my duty to ensure that in all things that I do, I actually honor and glorify his name, right? Now, that's not to say I'm going to be trying to force my beliefs on you. Absolutely not. Everyone is entitled to their own beliefs at the end of the day, because God literally gave us all free choice. He is the way, the truth, and the life, right? Christ Jesus. However, he's not going to force himself upon any one of us. And similarly, I'm not going to force anything on anyone. So, all that aside, I also know that because faith is important to me, faith in Jesus Christ specifically, because, we in 2024, and a lot of people like to sugarcoat, when they are talking about their actual belief in God, it's very easy to just say God, and then you have to be wondering which God, because let's be real, a lot of the stuff when that's out there, when people say God, they're not necessarily talking about God, creator of the universe, God of the Bible, God, Father, Son, Holy, the Holy Ghost. Like, that's not who they're necessarily talking about. So just to be clear, I am referring to Jesus Christ. Okay, so with that as well, because of that, I know like going forward, and I've had experiences with this as well before, where certain projects or certain opportunities that came up were not in alignment with my beliefs, right? Like I remember having opportunities where the people, like let's just say, their beliefs were very essentially it's just not on par with things that I've already been personally convicted of, that this is not something to meddle with. So with that, I had to make the choice within myself, like, hey, do you take the project because it's like, oh yeah, you need the money and you want the money and you want to be able to have this money to now put towards your goals and your dreams and your visions and all that stuff? Or do you stand firm on the fact that, you've already been convicted by God about this particular thing and you don't want to have to dabble anywhere close to this, right? So for me, I definitely made at the time, it was a little bit of a tough choice because again, when you're in the moment and you feel like, no, I actually really need this, it's not necessarily the easiest choice. But I made the choice to say, like, yeah, I'm not going to do this because as much as I may quote unquote need the money, I don't need the after effects and the long term, you know, things that comes along with that. So I made the choice to say, yeah, I'm not going to necessarily work on a project like that. I'm not going to entertain those kind of things because it goes against my belief. Similarly, there are things, in Brandon world where for me, I don't necessarily agree with. For example, I feel like I may have touched on this before, but if not, I'm will for sure touch on it in either future episodes and most certainly across my blog and social media. So if you aren't following me across social media, now would be a great time. Okay, all the info in the description and all that jazz. But yeah, when it comes to the popularized brand and archetypes, right? And I'm sure if you do a Google search right now, you will see that a lot of the brand strategists, brand designers, essentially everybody in the design world and anyone in marketing world typically tend to point you to well, they take 12. There's about 100 archetypes that Carl Jung came up with, but there are popularized 12. And for a while I was using it, and it was just like, those things where you're using it, but in the back of your mind, you're always just like, this doesn't quite vibe or fit with one, the way you think, or two, just it's just weird. It just felt weird. So that's always been one of those things for me. And finally, one day I got to the point where it was just like, yeah, I'm definitely not using this anymore because for me, one, it doesn't necessarily go with the way I believe that you have to position yourself out there by only following these kind of archetypes, and these are the only way for you to be able to tell your story, and this is the only way for you to innately know who you are, that type of thing. And as well, um later on, finding out that Carl himself believed that Jesus was essentially like I guess you could say like an ascended master. Like essentially, he doesn't necessarily believe in the deity of Christ himself, right? It's more just like, oh, he thinks he was some person that kind of was just here and oh woo. So for me, that is clearly was a conflict. So I'm already not fully immersed in your archetypes, and then you also want to come disrespect Jesus. Absolutely not. So I was like, yeah, peace out. That's definitely not for me. So since then I found, or not even found, more like dug more into my own approach of how I do stuff for Brandon. And of course, as time goes on, developing more and more on that. Um, but yeah, I wanted to share those two examples off the back just to show us like sometimes the things that we have as personal values, personal beliefs, personal principles, morals, guiding, guiding things for our lives, it may not always go with the mainstream, right? But are you okay with that? Like, are you okay with the fact that, yeah, people may actually really dislike you because you refuse to bend your principles? Um, Another core value that I absolutely believe in is the art of creative expression. And with that, I will add that a lot of people tend to think that they are not creative at all. And personally, I completely disagree, right? Because again, God made us all in his image. And we know that God is a creator, right? He's the ultimate creator. And if we're all made in his image, that means regardless if you are a teacher, if you are a scientist, if you are a painter, designer, a runner, a whatever it is that you are still a creative being, right? Because essentially you are just going to create ways in your own industry to do things, ways to innovate, a path for other people to follow. And ultimately, there's nowhere that someone could say, oh, I've never had to create, something that other people have to do. So again, yeah, I just personally believe we're all creators and we are all made in his image. And because of that, we have the gift of creative expression, right? And the creative expression is really just us putting our creativity to the fullness of whatever God wants it to be. So it could be that he's given us, one kind of gift in whatever area it is that we are in, right? So again, for the example with the teacher, you're teaching kids and you are really good at the subject that you do. Like, how far are you willing to push that? How far are you willing to take that to ensure like every child that comes in your care in school are going to walk away with their lives transformed, remembering you as like, wow, I really enjoyed that teacher because that teacher cared, that teacher, did his or her best to make sure that I really understood what they were saying. Yeah. So, just being able to take whatever it is and that willingness to say, I'm going to go above and beyond. Another value for me is definitely, I'd say, community and authentic. Yeah, I'd say authentic conversations as well as being vulnerable, because I will say that is one of those things where it can be a challenge, right? Like we all have those, I guess, stages in our life where we've had friends where we thought, wow, this is the best thing that's ever happened. And then as you grow up, you kind of like grow apart. And it's not necessarily that, oh, the person is bad or you're bad. It's just you guys grew apart, right? But you also have the cases where, yes, you start to realize like people really aren't what they say they were or what they've been pretending to be. And you start to see that more. I guess as you get older, you really start to see it for what it is. Because one thing I will say in my experience is that a lot of the times people truly will kind of like just, yeah, pretend to be, I guess, in favor of you, or that pretend that they like you just because of the things that you are able to bring to them or bring into their lives, or the way that you're benefiting them. And the moment that you kind of like wake up and realize like, wow, this has been absolutely one-sided all along, and you start to set your boundaries, start to recognize like your own actual worth, you start to see like the people who actually did genuinely care for you outside of just what you can give them, and then the ones who, yeah, that's really all they've been there all along for. But all that to say, cultivating good community, cultivating healthy community is absolutely a core value for me, just because, I don't think we could go through this life or doing anything really without having solid bonds, right? And yes, sometimes it may be very hard to figure out how or where or what that could look like. But I believe, one, this is an area where God, when you seek for wisdom, you seek for discernment, He starts to truly open your eyes to see these things, and, you know, our willingness to not like close our ears and our eyes to it, but actually be like, okay, God, I see this is what you're showing me. All right, let me tap in a little more and ask you, why is this what you're showing me? What does it mean? What do you want me to take away from this, right? All that type of stuff. The more willing we are to go deeper in that, the more we're able to just recognize when genuine, mutually beneficial relationships are in our circles, in our lives, and cultivate those. And that's not to also say that we should automatically kind of like be discouraged or completely shut down the one, those relationships or connections where it you start to recognize it's a bit one-sided. Of course, before you ever like fully walk away, make sure you voice your opinion, make sure you have a conversation, because I also believe that when you kind of just ghost people without saying anything, that's like, y'all, we're adults, that's rude. It's rude, it's really disrespectful, and honestly, that solves nothing, because now not only did you walk away and you probably have contempt and, whatever going on with you, now the other person's also like, I have no idea what just happened. So now they probably also angry, or, whatever the case is. So I'm just saying, like, before you decide to just ghost people, have a conversation. I promise everybody walks away better. And if for whatever reason having that conversation leaves it where it's just completely sour, then you clearly see in that moment that, yeah, the best option is truly to walk away. uh Anyways, moving onwards. um Another value for me, I would say, is, yeah, to honestly just have impactful service. And for me, that just looks like I want to make sure that whatever clients, customers, people that I work with in any kind of capacity, it's not just something where, oh, we're exchanging, cash for some sort of like result, but it's really, it's deeper than that. Like, I want for you to walk away where, your life transformed in some kind of way. Maybe things got better in terms of the systems that you're using. Maybe things got better in terms of your outlook, right? Your outlook and approach to how it is that you're going to be doing things. It could just be simple things. It doesn't always have to be grand, lavish, out there things. But the idea for me is like, in order to have impact, each person must walk away like better than how I first found them, as a result of me being with them. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's ultimately the goal, because again, like, Christ called me to a higher standard, so I should be willing to make sure that, yeah, I'm doing all that I can to really impact people in the most positive way possible. And I think as well, because I'm big on, wanting to help people build legacy brands, wanting people to just tell their own authentic stories, to visually showcase their genius. I really think that when we could tap into, just a transformation, tap into elevating those around us, that really, that lights me up, So that for me is also a big one. And of course, goes without saying, visual storytelling is a core value. Like, I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's one of those things where I tried to walk away from countless times, and it kept coming back up, right? Because I really do love branding. I love doing website design and development. I love essentially just creating, right? Creating whatever. So it's one of those things where I know because I'm so passionate about it, it's become like a deep rooted value that I want to use it to again help people who especially feel ashamed or who felt very afraid about how to show themselves, right? All of themselves. Because we know we live in a world where if you if you at any time come off as like the quirky, different, not fit all up in the box type of person, it's like you're subjecting yourself to judgment, you're subjecting yourself to scrutiny. And one of the things I had to learn and really just become okay with is the fact that, at the end of the day, whatever these people think, whatever they believe, it honestly does not matter to you because, one, if you do good, people gonna say something. If you do bad, people gonna say something. So isn't it better to just like do the things that's going to please the Lord, do the things that's going to light you up, and do the things that actually makes you move your needle forward? You feel me? Like, who cares what people think at the end of the day? Because I mean, they're not really helping you in any other way with their judgment. So why internalize that? So that is something I had to learn for myself as well. And because of that, I had to also get to, I guess, not necessarily a value, but this is just a personal reminder that I'm sure is of benefit to you guys as well. The idea to, yeah, just dare to live shame free, right? Like Christ literally sacrificed himself because he loves us. He loves us so deeply. And because of that, he broke all the bondage of shame, of guilt, of sin, if we are willing to, just join with him in a personal relationship. And who am I to be like, you know what, Lord, you did all this for me, but I'm gonna let fear and I'm gonna let shame and I'm gonna let what people who clearly ain't never hung on no tree for me dictate what it is that I'm gonna do. And is it sometimes awkward? Absolutely, especially when like certain people are legit only looking because they want to have run and go tell that to their friends, run and go like whatever, right? Tear your name apart at the dinner table. But at the end of the day, we have to get to that point where we recognize, yeah, you just gotta block it out, and as well use that as the reminder that while this world can be mean and just crazy, how much more should we be loving, right? And it definitely takes some getting used to because for a while I used to let when people did crazy things or said crazy things or just, things that were very blatantly a lie about me. I used to let that get to me all the time, and I'd be like, oh no, you not about to say this about me. You are not gonna walk away with that belief, and I'd be trying to fight tooth and nail about like, no, this is wrong. You can't believe that. But now I'm like, listen, whatever. People will believe whatever they want. People will say whatever they want. What ultimately matters is what God thinks. What ultimately matters is what God actually says about us, right? So, with that, let me save my energy for what actually matters, the things that He's called me to, like doing this podcast and making sure I actually stay consistent about it. So, you know, being focused on like working towards business, being focused on working in ministry, working in just different ways, you know? So, with that, I want you to think about what are some values that are helping shape how you go forward in the remainder of this year and beyond, right? What are some things that you know are guiding principles that they're immovable? Like it doesn't matter what comes up, this is how you're going to always feel about said thing. And how are you going to ensure that you keep those values deep rooted? So, I hope you enjoyed this episode today. If you did, definitely send me a DM with your, I guess, favorite point or takeaway from today's show. And absolutely come back next time for the next episode. But until then, I will catch y'all later. All right. Bye.